Part three. So I was basically sitting here being dramatic, being like, what are my principles? And how have they survived through all this? But I'm not necessarily being dramatic. Like, I'm completely serious. But it's like if you had a TV show and then like the OG cast split up and then they had like all of their like spin-off shows and then the characters that you're following at the moment sort of continued their not their role but their archetype, which is why they have the role, and they adapted their performance methods to that situation, and it works until a point because then the character encounters countermeasures or tactics that completely um, breaks apart certain parts of their plans or disrupts their performance. But the reasoning for the way that they perform and how they structure it comes from set principles, and then they have to either adapt even more or they have to sort of pivot, not pivot, but half step into a different format, which doesn't necessarily abandon their principles, but it does leave certain tactics behind. And when after a while, let's just say halfway, like after like almost to the end of the first season of their spinoff, going into their season two or whatever, um, the way that they perform has been more affected by their experience, and they've had to adjust. But let's just say it's been fast paced. So then they're sitting with themselves and saying, like, not who am I now, not what are my principles now, but the things that I did had meaning to them in a sense. But that meaning, the meaning itself got disrupted. So then not what am I doing now, but what am I putting my energy to in now that I feel matters? And what do my actions mean to me, if that makes sense? That doesn't make sense, but I'm going to keep it in the video because I'm not recording this again. But anyways, um because that's why I like do the consistency thing, and the I have notes for the continuity. But you know, like I just like because I've been like doing numbering things or whatever, because like I originally had like my plan A, and I use it to like it's like different like notes and vibes to mark my different stages, and then like I just like check them off or whatever. And like you see them in my dancing videos, and then I have like numbers. I'm on 31 right now, but and then like just like some of my little notes like on awareness and some other stuff, and like sort of reminding myself to do certain things that I naturally did before, but um, working through certain processes, you can actually accidentally abandon certain useful, um, I wouldn't say habits, but useful ways of moving that you never necessarily put any thought to because it was just sort of automatic for you. And those things can sort of get left behind when certain tactics that are used are seen as obsolete due to whatever, right? So then you're giving a name to things that you've done previously and realizing that's just kind of how you function, but that's when you have to relearn yourself, yada yada yada. But that's another thing why I'm just sitting here just like what are my principles or whatever, because it's as you get older, there's things that you just have to think more about why you do everything. And not in a like you were not thinking you were dumb when you were younger, but more like a you have to put a word to almost every detail. And when you do that, you realize how many of those small things that were just nothing to you were actually pretty significant and were a bigger part of how you functioned and your personality than you thought. But yeah, and when those things come up later, that's when I would put the word evolve, because it's just like, then how did those principles evolve through all of your different ventures, situations, events, and just general life experience? And what does that actually make them now? Because someone told me that for certain areas of life, being the soft one, or like, like trying to be the friendly neighborhood bestie, it doesn't necessarily last in the same format that it it did when it was like one of your main things or something like that. And it's definitely not going to be called that once you get into a more serious area of your life. So then, what could the basic concept of unity and making that an important factor, even in times of division or complex dynamics? That's what I've personally been trying to figure out. But um, have to figure out how to put a word to that and all the other principles as well, and weighing them and such. And this is the point where I bridge my own gap.
What?